The morning Donovan Achebe walked out of the family court building on Queen Street. It was raining the way it only rains in Toronto in November. Not hard enough to be dramatic. Just steady and gray and indifferent, like the city had somewhere else to be. He had a plastic bag with his son's drawings in it. That was mostly what he'd fought for. Not the house in Scarborough, not the savings account they'd built together over 9 years. Just the drawings. 63 of them numbered on the back in his son's handwriting, a project Mateo had started when he was 5 and never stopped, and shared custody every other week, which the judge had granted without much ceremony. Donovan stood on the courthouse steps and let the rain hit his face and thought about nothing in particular. He was 41 years old. He had a truck, a rented room above a Portuguese bakery on Dundas, and a 9-year-old boy who still believed, with the full sincerity of childhood, that his father could fix anything with the right tools and enough patience. He was not sure that boy was wrong. But he was less sure he was right. The black SUV was parked at the curb with its hazards on, which was illegal, which nobody seemed to care about. The woman standing beside it was holding an umbrella she wasn't really using. She had it open above her head but wasn't paying attention to it, and the rain was getting the shoulder of her coat anyway. She was watching him. Not the way people watch strangers, the way people watch someone they've been waiting for. "Mr. Achebe," she said, when he reached the bottom step. He stopped. "Yeah, my name is Sylviane Okafor." She said it like it was supposed to mean something. Then, when it clearly didn't, "I'm the founder and CEO of Okafor Strategic Group. We manage infrastructure investment portfolio across the country. I have offices in Calgary, Vancouver, and Montreal. My Toronto office is on Bay Street." Donovan looked at her. She was maybe 45, though she carried it the way certain women do, not pretending to be younger, just not particularly interested in the number. Her coat was charcoal gray, well cut. Her expression was composed in a way that looked practiced, not natural. "Okay," he said. "I'd like to speak with you," she said. "If you have a moment." "I just finalized my divorce," he said. "I don't really have a lot of moments left." Something moved across her face. Not quite sympathy. More like recognition. "Actually why I'm here," she said. He got in the car because the rain was getting worse and he didn't have anywhere particular to be until 3 o'clock, when he was picking Mateo up from school. He told himself he'd hear her out for 10 minutes. He told himself it was just curiosity. The inside of the SUV smelled like leather and something faintly floral that he couldn't identify. There was a driver in the front who didn't turn around or introduce himself. Sylviane settled into the seat across from Donovan. The SUV had rear-facing seats, which struck him as excessive, and set her umbrella against the door with the precision of someone who didn't waste movements. "I'll be direct with you," she said. "Good," he said. "I need a husband, not permanently. For approximately 6 months, possibly up to a year. A legal marriage with an agreement signed before anything begins. You would be compensated. Your son would be cared for. At the end of the arrangement, we would divorce quietly, and you would leave with enough to buy a home outright. Wherever in this country you want to live." Donovan looked at her for a long moment. "Why?" he said. "That's the right question," she said, "which is part of why I'm asking you." She opened a folder on the seat beside her and handed him a single sheet of paper. It was a background summary. His name at the top, his address, his employer, Dempsey & Sons Construction, where he'd worked as a site foreman for 11 years, his son's names and school, his credit score, his late mother's name. He looked up at her. "I know that feels intrusive," she said. "It feels like something that should have a lawyer attached to it." "There will be lawyers, mine and yours, of your choosing. I'll cover all legal fees." She paused. "I had you looked into because I needed to know who I was asking. I don't do things without information. It's not personal." "Everything in that file is personal," he said. She acknowledged this with a small nod. "Fair." He set the paper down. The rain was loud on the roof of the SUV. Outside, a streetcar went past, its windows fogged over. "Not a question. Just say the rest of it." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "My company is currently the subject of a hostile acquisition attempt. One of my major institutional investors, a man I trusted with 15 years of professional relationship, has been systematically building a coalition to push me out. He's been telling our board that I'm unstable, that I make decisions emotionally, that I'm not suited for the demands of the role." She said all of this very evenly. "The way you say things you've already processed enough times that they've stopped surprising you. Part of the story he's selling is that I am, in his words, personally unmoored. I have no partner, no family stability. I travel constantly. I make decisions alone at 3 in the morning, and a husband fixes that. A husband changes the optics," she said. "It doesn't fix anything. But right now, optics are the terrain I'm fighting on, and I'm losing. I need to stop losing. Donovan was quiet for a moment. Then, why not someone in your world? Someone who already knows how to move in those circles? Because someone in my world would use what they knew, she said. Because everyone in my world is already on one side or another, and I can't afford to hand anyone leverage over me. She looked at him steadily. You don't know any of these people. You don't have any use for my professional world. You have nothing to gain from my enemies and nothing to lose to my allies. She paused. And your file suggests you are, by every available measure, a man who keeps his word. He thought about the plastic bag of his son's drawing sitting on the seat beside him. I have a kid, he said. I know, he comes first, in everything. That's not negotiable. I wouldn't ask you to negotiate it, she said. He looked out the window at the gray street, the gray sky, the steady, indifferent rain. I'll think about it, he said. That's all I'm asking, she said. He didn't tell anyone about the conversation right away. Not his brother in Brampton, not his friend Curtis, who would have had 17 opinions about it. Not the woman at the front desk of the family court, who'd handed him his documents with the weary efficiency of someone who'd seen it all. He just picked up Matteo at 3 o'clock, the way he always did, and they went to a diner on Girard Street where Matteo had a grilled cheese and Donovan had coffee and pretended to look at a menu. Matteo was 9 3/4, which he considered importantly different from 9. He had Donovan's forehead and his mother's eyes and a way of observing things that was distinctly his own, quiet and thorough, like he was always collecting data for a report he'd eventually hand in. He didn't talk constantly the way some kids did. He said things when he had something to say. Tonight he ate half his grilled cheese and then looked at his father and said, "You look like when you're about to drive on ice." Donovan looked up. "What?" "That face. When you're about to do something that could go wrong but you think you can handle it." Donovan stared at his son for a moment. Then he said, "I'm fine." Matteo nodded with the patient skepticism of someone who had not been born yesterday. "Okay," he said, and ate the other half of his sandwich. That night, after Matteo was asleep on the pullout in Donovan's rented room, he'd insisted on the pullout so Donovan could have the bed, which was the kind of generosity that made your chest hurt. Donovan sat at the small kitchen table and looked at the business card Sylviane had given him. Clean white card, her name, a phone number. Nothing else. He thought about the house in Scarborough that would be sold at the end of the month. He thought about Matteo's school, which was a good school, which he'd been quietly terrified of having to move him away from. He thought about what it would mean to own a place, not rent, own, somewhere he and Matteo could actually put down roots, hang things on walls, have a yard for a dog they didn't have yet but had talked about extensively. He picked up the card. Then he set it down. Then he picked it up again. He called her the next morning. She answered on the second ring. "I have conditions," he said. "I expected you would," she said. "Matteo is never part of this arrangement. He's not a prop. He doesn't go to events. He doesn't get photographed." "Agreed. You tell me everything relevant to whatever I'm walking into. No surprises. I can tell you everything I know," she said. "I can't promise no surprises. That's not a promise I can make about my life." He respected the honesty of that more than he wanted to. 6 months, he said. "That's the starting point. We revisit after 6 months. Agreed. And I want to meet whoever is trying to take your company," he said. "Not formally. Just, I want to know who I'm in the middle of." She was quiet for a moment. "I'll arrange it." "One more thing," he said. "I'm not going to be someone I'm not. If I'm meeting your board or your investors or whoever, I'm a construction foreman from Toronto. I'm not going to pretend otherwise." "I know who you are," she said. "That's why I asked." His name was Reginald Price, and Donovan disliked him immediately. Not because he was aggressive, though he was. Not because he was obviously wealthy, which Donovan had met enough of to be unimpressed by. It was something more specific. Reginald Price walked into a room and immediately began calculating how much of it he owned. Donovan had met that type on job sites, in the form of developers who saw the people building their buildings as interchangeable variables rather than human beings. The calculation was the same, only the scale was different. They met at a charity event in the distillery district 3 weeks into the arrangement. Donovan wore a suit that Sylviane's assistant had helped him find. He'd insisted on paying for it himself, and her assistant had looked briefly uncertain about how to handle that before gracefully accepting. And he stood beside Sylviane in a room full of people who were very smoothly performing the act of caring about something. Price found them at the bar. "Sylviane," he said warmly, "the way you say the name of someone you're actively working to destroy." "Reginald," she said, matching it. His eyes moved to Donovan. The calculation happened very quickly. "I don't believe we've met," Price said. Donovan Achebe, Donovan said, and shook his hand and held his gaze just a beat longer than was comfortable. Something registered in Price's face, a small adjustment like a man recalibrating. He'd expected, Donovan thought, something else, someone softer, someone he could dismiss faster. What do you do, Donovan's? Construction, Donovan said. Site foreman. I manage builds across the GTA. Interesting. The word was perfectly empty. It is, Donovan said. You'd be surprised. Later, walking to the car, Sylviane said, You don't like him, do you? She thought about it. I used to respect him, she said. I think that's worse, actually. Yeah, he said. I think you're right. The arrangement was strange in the way that most arrangements are strange. Not constantly, not dramatically, but in small, persistent ways that accumulated over time. They had dinner twice a week to maintain appearances. They texted with a regularity that was at first purely functional and then slowly became something else. She sent him articles about things she thought he might find interesting without explanation. He sent her photographs of the building he was currently overseeing, a mixed-use development in the Junction. Just because the light was good some mornings. She had a house in Rosedale that was beautiful in the way of houses that have been designed rather than lived in. High ceilings, bookshelves that spanned entire walls, a kitchen that nobody cooked in. There was a housekeeper named Judith who greeted Donovan each visit with escalating warmth, which he suspected had more to do with the regularity of his presence than with anything he'd done to earn it. There were no personal photographs in the house, not anywhere. He noticed this on his third visit and didn't say anything. On his fifth visit, he noticed it again. On his seventh visit, Sylviane was on a call when he arrived, and he waited in the living room, and he looked carefully at the bookshelves, and he found, tucked at the very end of a bottom shelf behind a set of thick legal binders, a single framed photograph. A young woman, maybe 20, maybe younger, standing in what looked like a park somewhere, laughing at something off camera. She had Sylviane's cheekbones and a stranger's ease with being seen. He didn't take the photo out. He put it back exactly as he'd found it. When Sylviane came off her call, she found him sitting in the armchair reading a book he'd pulled from the shelf, which is exactly what she expected to find, because he was a man who could wait without fidgeting, which she had come to think of as an unusual and undervalued quality. Sorry, she said. Board member on a power trip. It's fine, he said. How are things looking? She sat down across from him, and for a moment she looked tired in a way she usually didn't let herself look. Price has been talking to our largest limited partner, suggesting I've been hiding personal instability behind strong quarterly numbers. She paused. He has documents. Internal communications, probably from someone I trusted. I don't know who yet. Is there anything actually in the communications that hurts you? She was quiet. There's a conversation where I said I'd made a decision without full board notification. It was a judgment call, and I stand by it. But it can be framed as reckless. Was it reckless? No. Then we need someone to say that who isn't you, he said. Someone with no stake in the outcome, whose opinion can't be bought. She looked at him. Do you have someone in mind? I know a few people, he said. Independent contractors, engineers I've worked with for years. People who know how to speak plainly in a room full of people expecting them to speak in circles. Sometimes that matters more than credentials. She was still looking at him with that expression he'd started to notice, the one where she was taking him seriously and also, somehow, hadn't expected to. He found it less annoying than he used to. I'll think about it, she said. That's all I'm asking, he said. It was Matteo who broke it open, the way children do, not deliberately, not with any understanding of what they were breaking open, just with the uncomplicated precision of a person who has not yet learned to avoid true things. It happened on a Sunday in January. Donovan had custody that weekend, and Sylviane had called with a question about a document she needed him to review, and Matteo had answered Donovan's phone because Donovan was in the shower, and by the time Donovan got out, his son was sitting on the pullout with the phone pressed to his ear, deep in what appeared to be a genuine conversation. Because the ones with the most windows have the best light, Matteo was saying, with authority. You want to draw where the light is. Donovan stood in the doorway, towel around his waist, as watched his son talk to Sylviane Okafor about natural light. When Matteo finally handed the phone over, he said, She sounds smart. She is, Donovan said. Why does she sound like she doesn't usually talk to kids? Donovan didn't answer right away. He said, She hasn't had many around. Matteo considered this with the judiciousness of someone allocating a limited resource. She should probably have some around, he said. She seems like she could use it. 3 weeks later, Sylviane asked, carefully, whether Donovan might consider bringing Matteo to an informal family gathering she was hosting, Not a staged event, just a Sunday afternoon with a few of her closer associates and their families. No pressure, no cameras. He thought about it. Then he asked Matteo. Matteo said, "Does she have good snacks?" Donovan said he would find out. Sylviane, when asked, said she would make sure of it. The afternoon was unremarkable in the best way. Matteo ate 3 of everything on the snack table, wandered the bookshelves with the focus of someone conducting an audit, and at some point ended up in the sunroom with a sketch pad that had appeared from somewhere, drawing the back garden through the tall windows. Sylviane found him there late in the afternoon when the gathering had begun to wind down. She stood in the doorway and looked at what he was drawing. The spare February garden, the bare trees, the light going amber and sideways over the fence. "That's really good," she said. Matteo looked up. "Dad says I see things other people walk past. I think he's right." Matteo looked at her for a moment with that quiet, systematic gaze of his. "He said you used to have someone," he said. "Someone you had to stop looking for." Donovan, who had appeared in the hallway behind Sylviane, went completely still. Sylviane was very quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Where did you hear that?" "He said it when he didn't know I was listening," Matteo said, with the complete absence of guile available only to 9-year-olds. "But I was." Sylviane's face did something Donovan had never seen it do before. It didn't compose itself. It just was. "I had a daughter," she said finally, quietly. "A long time ago. I was 22 and I had no money and my family was very traditional and they made a decision I wasn't strong enough to fight. I've been looking for her for 11 years. She paused. "I found a name 6 months ago, an address. I think she's in Winnipeg. I don't know how to." She stopped. Matteo looked at her with full attention. "Why not?" he said. "Because what if she doesn't want to know me?" Sylviane said. "What if I've spent 11 years looking for someone who doesn't want to be found?" Matteo was quiet for a moment. He looked down at his draw me once. "When I got lost at Canada's Wonderland, I was only gone for like 20 minutes, but he was really scared." He paused. "He said it didn't matter if I was mad at him for losing me. He was going to find me anyway." Sylviane said nothing. "It would matter to her," Matteo said, "that you kept looking. Even if she's mad, it would still matter." Donovan drove home that evening in silence. Matteo fell asleep in the back seat somewhere on the Gardner, the sketch pad still in his lap. The city slid past the windows in orange and white. He thought about a lot of things. About the house in Rosedale with no photographs. About Reginald Price in that room, making his calculations. About a background check with his mother's name at the bottom of the page. And a woman with an umbrella she wasn't properly using, standing in the rain. He thought about the very specific loneliness of being a capable person in a situation that requires a different kind of strength than the one you've spent your whole life building. He thought about Matteo, asleep in the back seat, who had looked at a woman he barely knew and simply told her the truth, because he had not yet learned to believe that the truth requires scaffolding. The next morning, he called Sylviane at 7:15. She answered on the first ring, which meant she'd been awake. "Write to her," he said. No preamble. She would know what he was talking about. A long pause. Then, "I don't know what to say. Start with 'I've been looking for you,'" he said. "See what she says." Another pause. "And if she doesn't respond?" "Then you wrote the letter," he said. "That matters." Matteo was right about that. He heard her breathing on the other end of the line. Slow and deliberate, the way she breathed when she was making a decision. "Donovan," she said. "Yeah, this was supposed to be 6 months," she said. "We're at 5. "I know. I don't want to renegotiate the agreement," she said. "Neither do I," he said. "What do you want?" she said, and she wasn't asking about the agreement. He thought about it. Outside the bakery window, the morning was doing what February mornings in Toronto do. White sky, cold light, the street still, and waiting for the day to decide what kind of day it would be. "I want to stop pretending this is only logistics," he said. "I want to have a real conversation about what this is. Not what we agreed it would be, what it actually is." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I've never been good at that kind of conversation." "I know," he said. "You're better at it than you think." Price made his move in March. It was a formal request for a board vote on Sylviane's leadership, backed by the limited partner he'd been cultivating and a carefully worded letter from 2 minor shareholders. The letter contained the phrase "emotionally compromised" in the 3rd paragraph. Donovan read it and recognized the move. He'd seen it on job sites, scaled differently but structurally identical. Someone who can't win on merit redefines the terms of merit. The board meeting was on a Thursday afternoon. Donovan was not there because he was on a job site in Etobicoke, and Matteo had a school project due, and that was the actual texture of his life, which was not glamorous and was not supposed to be. He got a text at 4:17 that said, Board voted 7-3 to retain current leadership. Price resigned from advisory position effective immediately. He read it twice. Then he sent back, "Good." Then, after a moment, "Call when you can." She called at 8 o'clock after Matteo was asleep. She told him about the meeting in her precise, economical way. The testimony from the independent structural engineer Donovan had introduced her to, who had spoken for 12 minutes with no notes about what professional judgment under pressure actually looked like, and how it differed from recklessness. She told him about the partner who'd shifted their vote at the last moment. She told him she'd cried in the car on the way home, which she said with the same tone you'd use to report a minor weather event, as if she were still deciding how to feel about having had feelings. "How are you?" he asked. "Tired," she said. "Relieved. A little, I don't know, unmoored." She paused. "When you're fighting hard in one direction, not really," he said. "Stopping is its own kind of a loss. Even when you win." A silence. Then I got a response from Winnipeg. He straightened, and she wants to meet. A very long pause. "Her name is Adeze. She's 23. She works in a library." Another pause. "She said she's been hoping I would reach out for 2 years." He sat with that for a moment, the thing it meant. The 11 years of it and the 2 years on the other end and the single letter in between. "Sylviane," he said. "Yes, go to Winnipeg. I'm going on Friday," she said. "I already booked the flight." He smiled. "Good, Donovan." Her voice was different, lower, more careful. "I want to say something." "Okay, this arrangement was supposed to be about optics, about survival. I was asking you to be useful in a very specific and limited way." A pause. "It wasn't supposed to become." She stopped. Started again. "You didn't have to do any of the things you did. The engineer, Matteo. The things you said about the way you just showed up. You didn't have to do any of that." "I know," he said. "Why did you?" He thought about it honestly. "Because it was in front of me," he said finally. "Because you were in front of me, and I'm not really built for looking away." A very long silence. "The agreement expires in 3 weeks, she said. "I know." "I'd like to talk about that," she said. "What comes after?" "So would I," he said. A breath. "Okay." He told Matteo about it on a Saturday morning in late March over pancakes. Not the business arrangement, he kept that part in the adult world where it belonged. Just the real part. That Sylviane was someone his father liked. That she was going to be around more. That it was okay if Matteo had feelings about that, good or complicated or both. Matteo ate his pancakes and thought about it. "Does she know about the dog?" he said finally. "What dog? The dog we're going to get," Matteo said patiently. "When we have a yard. The one we talked about." Donovan thought about a house in Rosedale with a large, unfilled back garden that a 9-year-old had drawn from memory, getting the proportions exactly right. "I'll mention it," he said. "Good," Matteo said. "She should probably know up front." He considered his pancakes. "She seems like someone who likes to have all the information." Donovan thought about a woman standing in the rain with an umbrella she wasn't properly using, holding a folder full of facts, asking a stranger on Courthouse steps to trust her with something. "Yeah," he said. "She does."